Hey, film friends, I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film, a podcast where we break down movies with some of my closest friends and special guests. Today, we're going down south together. We're running from Capone and his goons and getting cozy with the deep Mississippi Delta, where preacher boys belt the blues and Irishmen with red eyes dance a jig. Oh, baby, he's back. Guys, it's Ryan Coogler's Sinners. Okay, all right. This movie slaps. I'm pumped to be talking about a new original Ryan Coogler story. This is the guy behind Fruitvale Station, which, by the way, I know a lot of people started riding for Ryan when he did Black Panther or Wakanda Forever. And and certainly he had some other things in there which has drawn people's attention. But I would encourage everyone, go back and watch Fruitvale Station. You want to see an awesome MBJ performance. It's a hard-hitting film. It's a lot slighter, maybe 100 minutes, but it lands. That's when he caught my attention. It was long before Black Panther, I'll tell you that. So anyway, he's back. He's got an original story. He's got Michael B. back for all these sorts of things, and he wants to tell us a new story. So what can we say about Sinners? What can we say? Let's spend more time on themes than plot. All right. So if we're gonna do that, the plot essentially is brothers. I'm gonna try and make this as spoiler free as possible. Here's the great gift to give yourself. Don't watch trailers. We've talked about this before, but that for me, that was a game changer. In the case of this film, because I didn't know what was coming. So I will go as spoiler free as possible. So here you go. Brothers, there's an adjective going with that if you've seen the movie, but brothers return to their home in the Mississippi Delta to open a little place for the blues on an old killing floor. Yeah, that's about as spoiler free as we can get for the plot. And then the movie goes in lots of different genre directions. I'll just say that. Thematically, what a hodgepodge this thing is. But I would say most of all, like I just said, it's a genre picture. So as such, what you have here is an amalgamation, an admixture, a cornucopia of lots of different elements that maybe shouldn't match and yet somehow do. So he's giving us sort of like this Southern Gothic, post-World War I, Deep South, Jim Crow era, sharecroppers, like a lot of racial tension. That's in there. The American blues movement and its sort of birth and the way it gets wedded or bounces off of old-fashioned Southern Christian religion. All of that stuff is put in the stew together. And then, if you want no spoilers, turn it off. That all gets mixed up in a vampire flick. That is what Sinners is about. But to me, the movie is about a couple different things, and I want to tease them out in detail. It's about the power of music, in particular, the power of the blues, and its historical antecedents. It's about temptation, allure, the allure of power and influence, and I think the way that this film treats sexuality kind of gives credence and buttresses that. And it's about morals, ethics, values. I mean, the movie's called Sinners, and how does all of this stuff rub up in contradistinction to Christian thought? So, that's Sinners. So, let me just say, I think it's interesting, or it's of note, that there is a real life kind of analog for the story of Preacher Boy or Sammie, and it's. I haven't listened to interviews with Coogler, but I would say it is clearly something that's real, because the same year that he selected for the brothers to return home is, I believe, is 1932. That there was a famed blues musician named Robert Johnson. He became a traveling musician, and then he eventually sort of settled up north. So this movie kind of, I mean, there's a movie in the 80s with Ralph Macchio called Crossroads that tells the story of Robert Johnson going south and meeting the devil and all this sort of stuff. That's you guys want to dig in on that one and dust that one off. That's interesting. I've never seen the entire thing, I'll just say that, but the parts I've seen left an impression, I'll say that. So anyway, so they kind of take this story and then move it up to this guy going north, and then that is, as you see, kind of towards the end of the third act, that's Buddy Guy, essentially, and in the post-credits. So, what's so impressive about this movie is that, this is a vampire movie, but it literally takes an hour to set all of these people up, to give them backstories. So you get, this little Irish troupe here that play the folk. You get, Delroy Lindo is unreal in this movie, just giving you, just kind of like a drunk has-been who is a great musician. You got the brothers and their backstory as sort of, they basically are Yojimboing mobsters up in Chicago before they come down south. So, or Fistful of Dollars if you're more of a Clint fan. But anyway, that's off camera. The point is that all of this gets downloaded into this story. So for the first hour, not much happens. I mean, they're setting up this juke joint and they're gathering musicians, and you're getting to meet Smoke and Stack, and which, by the way, every time I heard Smoke, this movie's all about music, but I just thought of Smokestack Lightning from that song by Fire Woman by the Cult, I think it is. It just made me think of that, Smokestack Lightning. So that's the brothers. There's all this stuff going on. So he takes an hour setting all of this up, and then he wants to tell this story. So I think the story, yes, it's a vampire movie, but I think the bigger themes are, like I said, the power and the transcendence of music, the power of the blues, and it's a movement as an expression of a particular people in a particular cultural context that then gets sort of extrapolated down the road into, what we have today. And I think, like I said, this movie is about the allure. Vampiric stories are all about giving into the allure of temptation. You can see me in the Kleiner's great video on Nosferatu from last year if you want to dig into that a little more. And so the sexuality, it's a lot like A Time to Kill. Everyone's sweating in this movie. All the girls are sweating. They're all worried about dust, wiping themselves off. And the few scenes of sexuality that you get, they're not graphic. They're not graphic in what they depict. There's no nudity, but they're graphic in what they imply. And I think the point is that Coogler's trying to present sexuality not just as something rote or trite, but as this deeply alluring thing that sucks at you and pulls at you, and so I think that ultimately is kind of what's represented by the vampires, and this all kinds of comes together. And it's the preacher's boy who has to battle with whether he will return home to his father and their congregation, which is the cold open of this movie, or go off on his own, which seems to be as a turning away, a turn towards self, and away from those other values, right? So it's almost like the theme of the story is that you have to face evil, beat it, conquer it. You got to meet it head on, and then that allows the self-actualization of becoming the best person that you can be. So there is all of that really rich stuff, but the coolest thing about everything I just said is that gets appended to this incredible visual feast of a film. The visual sensibility of this movie is insane. I mean, it's so slickly edited. The sound design is incredible. This is just a guy who understands the relationship between music and melodrama and it understands the way to move people and get people with pathos, get them into a story about like a Southern Gothic vampire flick. I mean, look, there are two very clear antecedents to this movie in terms of what came to my mind. The first is Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, which is the same kind of movie in terms of its trappings and its like lonerism, but that movie was set more in like the modern American West than the older Southern Gothic era. So, or the like the old Deep South, Mississippi Delta. But they're definitely there. The more like prime one is, of course, From Dusk Till Dawn, which is, kind of being stuck in a place that wasn't what you thought it was. In that case, it's a bar with Clooney and those guys. But in this case, it's this juke joint, and then the vampires come out and all hell breaks loose, and they're trapped in this one place for this one night, and that's a lot of what that's doing. But around all of that, this guy is just making this visual feast. Half of this movie, guys, is like a musical. The centerpiece of this movie is this first Sammie music scene, and you can listen to like a short of Coogler talking about why he had to do it. And this is what I mean when I say the power of the blues. It literally starts with him singing this song, and then you watch like I don't even know what to call it, like a reverie, it's like something you would see on one of the old Hollywood musicals when all of the settings change and time is like morphing around us and the camera's kind of moving. And the idea is that we're basically getting the birth of like all of these modern genres in this moment, and it's coming up through like record scratching and hip hop and funk and like all of this stuff to the present. And it is an incredible scene in like a goofy genre picture. I mean, really. But that's the power of Coogler. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's a musical in moments. As an action movie and others, it just completely rips. And it's so fun. It's something for everyone. It takes its time setting up its exposition, and then that makes the second and third acts matter a little more. Let's see. I guess the only other pro I'd say is I do think it's worth asking, like, is this the best MBJ performance ever? Has Michael B ever been better? You guys leave me some comments and let me know what you think about that. I don't know. I like I said, I'm very prone to Fruitvale, and I loved The Wire when he was super young, but and I know he rips in Creed, and I didn't even mention Creed when I was talking about the way Coogler shapes his stories with this like unique eye to everything, even when he's telling an age-old franchise boxing movie, So, but I do think it begs the question because he is really, really good in this movie. So those are the pros. Cons, I don't have a lot, and my score is going to reflect it. I just want to tease out two things really briefly here for you guys. This movie is, I would say, a little shaggy, which is to say it is not a perfect film. But, I mean, guys, genre movies are supposed to be that, right? They're supposed to be a little scraggly, like you missed a little bit on that haircut. Like, by nature, they're just a little rough around the edges. So, I think that is the case here, but I think like the performances, like Wunmi, Mosaku, like there's so many good performances. I mean, Haley Steinfeld's great. Like there's other, I could read the whole cast list. There's like 10 people. Jack O'Connell, the villain. I mean, it is just really, really well cast. The guy that plays Preacher Boy, it's his first film, Miles, and he is exceptional. But it is shaggy. The only thing I wanted to say, and I just wonder, I'm just going to tease this out there because it's a very bad bit of criticism to say, why did you make this movie when you could have made that one? But part of me, I found myself when the vampire storyline hit and took over, I was so engaged with the first hour of the movie. I just kind of wanted the same movie but without vampires, because he was already setting up like such a good stuff about this like KKK bit and the like the isolation and of the black community, but finding their own roots in their own ways. And there's just a really good movie in there. Where I ultimately landed and why I don't think maybe I was right about my own criticism, and again, I'd love your thoughts, is that if he did that, he would have made a movie, it would have been his own, but that a lot of other people have made. And because he didn't do that, because he spun it into this crazy mashup genre picture about vampires that is like, the characterization is like richer than a Shakespearean story almost. Well, that might be a little overwrought, but you get the point. Because he chose to do that, he actually made a truly original work. And that, I think, is what I want to praise above all, is that this was his story. And, you know, it's a story with vampires and like encroaching evil, and that's what they're symbolic of. But you can spin that into this like rich discussion of like musicology and music history and the way we form things, like the way the Irish folk movement was birthed alongside the black blues movement from a people that were oppressed or marginalized. Like there's some real, and what that means in the face of real evil. I mean, all of that is just like really, really rich. It's a really rich text for a silly vampire flick. So I guess what I'm saying is it perfect? No, but I think it's pretty damn good. And that is what I would say in conclusion, really briefly, is that this is both a wildly ambitious meditation or reflection or exploration on American history and music, and a just rollicking good time. It's both those things at once. So final score, I'm going to give this one 4.3 out of 5 stars. That's what Sinners, from one sinner to another, me to Ryan Coogler, I want to say thank you for making this original work, and I hope people go see it because it is pretty impressive. And I will say it is a great big screen flick to see. So that's my recommendation, 4.3 out of 5. Check out Fruitvale. Let me know. Let me know if you have any cons. Let me know if you wanted to see the non-vampire. I'm curious about all these things. I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, till next time, I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film. Stay firm, friends.